Hey everybody, this is Stan Wanglund, your adjunct psychology professor from Psychology 223. This is a course in human exceptionality, and this particular video relates to caregiver stress, and specifically relates to chapter 6 in your text, where we're talking about the family and the stresses and strains on the family. And that's gone over with a short video that I have in your textbook. There's a lot of materials which go over the factors on, relating to the family in terms of financial stress, all the other kinds of things with siblings, the role of the mother, the role of the father. That's pretty much explained in the chapter and in the video and in the lecture that's provided for chapter 6. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to actually put together, along in a contemporaneous way with the course, a little mini workshop on caregiver stress. It's very, very important. I've done this many, many times up at the college. I've done it, for meetings with school professionals, with parents over the years. My goodness gracious, for the agency that I work with in just a wide variety of ways. And recently, I did it on two very large national podcasting shows. One was on the Neil Haley's show, and the tutor component of that, where we talked about stress, and also with a world famous author, speaker, and he has the Caregiver Dave podcasting network and show, Dave Nasani. I was on his show and talked about caretaker stress. Or caregiver stress and the things related to that, because that's what his whole thing is about, and the dangers of that. And I know in this class and other classes, many of these students are parents. The vast majority of them actually, in some classes, are parents, and many of you have children who are differently abled, who have exceptional behaviors, and some very, very, very severe. So I wanted to put this together with you, and again, for something helpful. Again, and if you are experiencing caregiver stress and it feels overwhelming, please get in touch with a professional or your doctor or your nurse practitioner, somebody to check you out, to make sure that your physical health is okay, in relation to the emotional stresses and strains that you might feel. So you can imagine, particularly for a first-time parent or family, you're anticipating a normal birth of a child and all the fantasies and worries and things that go along with that, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's a child born, and there's all kinds of complications, disorders. You're dealing with medical staff, physicians, surgeons, a whole bunch of things. It could be mild, it could be serious, it could be whatever. The point being is, whatever fantasy that you had, whatever picture in your mind's eye that you had of having a child, bam, that's gone. And you've got all these preconceived notions, a lot of mythology involved with it, a lot of fears, worries, anxiety, depression, whatever. Okay, now let's say you get through that phase and you're into this process now for a while or for many years. What happens? If you're the primary caretaker, if you're the caregiver, if you're the mother, the father, the sibling of somebody who has an exceptional behavior, there's a lot of stuff that comes along with that. That's why they call it caregiving. It's like if you have elderly parents, or a spouse that becomes sick, or anything else like that, or all of the above. You might have a kid, a spouse, and a parent that you're taking care of. So what can happen? You can get what they call caretaker fatigue. And caretaker fatigue, when you have somebody who's disabled, or somebody who's ill, or somebody who's suffering from caretaker fatigue, the odds that you're going to have a heart attack, a stroke, some kind of massive set of emotional or psychiatric or physical problems skyrockets. There's all kinds of statistics, and I don't want to scare the bejesus out of you with that. But a good place to look at that is the Mayo Clinic, the Centers for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health, so on and so forth. So what are some of the signs that you might find if you have caregiver stress? And I want to look at my notes here. Well, the first is a feeling of being overwhelmed or constantly worried. Yeah, it's anxiety. Anxiety is best described as a morbid dread or fear, an anticipation that something bad is going to happen to you, and it's going to affect you, your physical being, your emotional being, your general state of well-being. So you're constantly anxious. When you have caregiver or caretaker fatigue, particularly raising children who are developmentally disabled, exceptional, differently abled, whatever you'd like to define that as, you're going to start feeling tired very often. And the tiredness comes from the constant worry, it comes from the demands, it comes from a chronic worry in many instances that turns into depression. Anxiety and depression are linked hand in hand. When you're anxious for so long, sometimes you get this learned helplessness. You just burn out on it, and you go from anxiety into depression, or you go back and forth, and it's a vicious cycle. Okay. Another sign that you could have caregiver stress is that you get too much or too little sleep. Either you're preoccupied in the nighttime when you sit down and you begin ruminating on things and you can't go to sleep, or you're so exhausted from thinking about things that you go right to sleep. And then, it's hard to wake you up. You're exhausted. Here's another one: gaining or losing weight. It's a classic. You might deal with the anxiety and stress and depression by eating, overeating, not exercising, or you eat too much to give yourself comfort, or when you're alone, you just kind of gorge yourself to make yourself feel good with something comforting like food. Food, it could be alcohol, it could be cigarettes, it could be whatever, those kinds of things. You can start becoming easily irritated or angry. It's like you need emotional gold bond all the time, it's because your central nervous system is on edge, and because your sleeping patterns have been generally disrupted, and your eating patterns. All of these things are very important to your physical well-being. Obviously, your food for a general sense of well-being. Sleep is a restorative process, and when that gets messed up, your central nervous system gets messed up, and then you become easily irritated and angry. You start losing interest in things you used to enjoy. People will say, come on, you want to go bowling, you want to play golf, you want to go out and have a drink with the girls, you want to go watch a football game with the guys, whatever it is. I'm just giving you some general things. You probably have a whole host of other things that you enjoy that are totally different. But you lose interest in them. You say, I don't want to do that. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. And you start becoming a little bit more withdrawn from things, and you lack getting that recreational stuff, which is a restorative thing for you. Recreation means to recreate. You have some fun. It makes your central nervous system feel good. It releases a lot of hormones and neurotransmitters that feel really good in your system and make you feel good, and you're not doing that either. Other signs are that happen is, like I said, depression. You start feeling sad all the time. You start feeling like a victim. You start feeling put upon. You start feeling like you've got the plagues of Job. Those kind of things. That's a reference to the Bible, Job. The kind of thing that God gave him all. The devil gave him all these plagues, kinds of things in the Bible. You start having frequent headaches many times, body pains, and physical problems. So your emotional state will start to trouble your physical state. In other words, you'll have a lot of your immune system may be compromised, and you'll have a lot of what we call psychogenic or psychosomatic problems. The origins are emotional. The emotional stress starts to cause a physical breakdown, and then the physical breakdown hinders your immune system, and your immune system opens your system up to all kinds of other bad things. You might start abusing drugs, alcohol, or prescription medication very, very often. I can remember when my oldest daughter was a brilliant student. She was an anthropologist. She passed away. I didn't go through all kinds of terrible things, but I had been a smoker for many years and had stopped for many years. And for a period of time, as I was actually caretaking my elderly parents, I started smoking again. And somebody said, why the hell would you do that? And a friend of mine reminded me in a very wise way exactly why I was smoking. I know smoking is an old friend. It was one of the creature comforts that I had. I'm not an alcohol abuser. I'm not a drug abuser. I'm not an abusive personality or anything else like that. But I very much used to enjoy smoking a cigarette at certain times of the day, having a cup of coffee and relaxing. And all of the relaxing things had been taken away with me in caregiving for my parents, who my dad had severe dementia, and and then my daughter passing away on top of it. It was a lot, and I figured I wanted to cut myself a little slack there, and take care of myself with tobacco. Now for other people, it might be something else. It might be drinking too much. It might be sleeping too much. It might be taking a prescription medication for anxiety, whatever, a little bit too often. Those kind of things. What kind of things can you do when you find out that you have this caregiver stress? What are the things that you want to do? Well, I want to keep this video under 15 minutes, so that's why I was looking for this one little sheet here. The Mayo Clinic gives some strategies for stress, and the first thing to do is to accept help. Okay? The second thing to do is focus on what you realistically can provide to that person you're caregiving. If you have a child that for some reason needs to be in a group home because you just don't have the physical, emotional, whatever's wherewithal to do that, or you need some special set of circumstances, focus on what you can provide and what you need. Set realistic goals with the people that you're going to caretake for, whether they're your children, your parents, or anything else like that. Get connected is another one with caregiving resources, agencies, social workers, your doctor, your church, your synagogue if you have one, some kind of group that's a support group. So you seek that social support, those natural social supports, within your family or friends, and very specific kinds of support groups. Set personal health goals for yourself, where you know that you're the tool to do the caretaking or the advocating for this person. So you have to be healthy in order to help them. And if you can't do something, to admit it and try and get the help for that. If you start feeling ill, or you start feeling some of these other symptoms that are too much to handle, you want to see your doctor who could refer you to get some help. There are agencies, many agencies, that are there to help you. Okay? The other thing is to make sure you get respite care, that you have times away from that individual. Yes, even if it's your kid, times away. Okay? Those kind of things. It's important. When you have a child, a family member, that's a lifetime commitment that you're making. All right? And you may need time off work, and it may be extended. So check into the Family Medical Leave Act, where you work, if there is one, and see if that applies to you. So here's two things we did in this 13-minute plus video. I went over the signs of caregiver stress to you, which are really very important. A lot of people ignore. And then I went over some strategies for stress that are some common ones that you should do. There's also caregiver risk factors, and there's some caregiver tips for health and activity. I'm going to do that on a second video and also put that out there for you. And then you'll have access to these. Okay? So I'll be right back with part 2.